Hi, everybody. In this episode, I'm speaking with Celia Sandhya Daniels. And Celia is a trans woman, father, and husband. Celia shared so many personal stories in this episode, so I do want to provide a trigger warning. This episode does deal with rape, and so I want to make sure you're safe. If you are able to continue on and listen to the episode, Celia was so vulnerable and shared so many insights into her life and how change and acceptance starts from the bathroom to the boardroom. We discussed so many things and I learned a lot, and I think that there may be teachings for me. So if there's something that I missed or I'm saying incorrectly, or there are call-ins you can provide me, please do so by contacting me. You can always find me at The Inclusive Screenwriter on Instagram. So if this episode is safe for you, take a listen, leave a review, subscribe, and share. You can always find out about me and what I do, again, at The Inclusive Screenwriter on Instagram. I'm also an anti-oppression and anti-racism educator and consultant. So if I can support you and you or your organization and you're really ready to go from intentionality to impact, feel free to go ahead and DM me. All right, folks, go ahead and take a listen. Thanks so much for being here. I do appreciate you all. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Inclusive Storytelling Podcast. Today, I am so happy to be speaking with Celia. So as always with my guests, I always know that they know more about themselves than I do. So Celia, welcome. I do want to let our listeners know that we'll be discussing sensitive content, having some conversation that may trigger folks. So just wanted to make sure that folks have an opportunity to tune out if they are, if this is going to be something that's going to be uncomfortable for them. So thank you so much. So Celia, will you just let us know a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of jump into your life and the intersection with the media industry.
Thank you. Thank you, Ash. Thank you so much for this wonderful platform. So my name is Celia Sandhya Daniels. I go by she, her pronouns and also they, them pronouns. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a musician. I'm a parent. I am a songwriter. I'm a singer. I'm a hiker, blogger, all kinds of wonderful intersectionalities in my life. And I'm married to a beautiful woman, and we've been married for almost 23 years now. And I'm hoping to, spend rest of my time with her and
Yes.
my grow old as we age together. But I have a wonderful family that's so blessed, and I'm glad that I could do this podcast. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm going to share a lot more during our podcast while we discuss some of these issues.
Absolutely. So let's start at the beginning. I would love for us to know more about you when you were growing up in India, and let our listeners know a little bit more about you and some of the struggles you've had in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. As always, I'm an immigrant as well. So I have been living in India since I was born and brought up in Chennai. That's the place that I live. It was interesting when I was a child, probably around 4 years old. I told my mom that I wanted to be a girl. I was dreaming to be a girl.
Yep.
And I remember the time I was covering my head with my mom's sari and I was pretending to be a girl. My mom thought it was cute. And she said, "Oh, you're so cute." And they took pictures of me. But
Right.
unfortunately,
Right.
I don't remember any of those. It was all told by my parents and also mostly my mom and also my cousin sisters whom I was growing up with. And I always wore their skirts. They had long skirts, and I love being a feminine person,
Yep.
and that's how I grew up. But when I was 7 years old, I remember my mom telling me that you're a boy and you can't be wearing women's clothes, girls' clothes. And at probably I realized my gender at that early age, and I was thinking about, oh, I cannot wear women's clothes because I'm a boy. I thought I could live in both genders. That's how I I was
Why
assuming.
not? Why not
Yeah, I
have it
know.
all?
That's how I thought. And then they said, no, you cannot live this way because being a boy is good. You need to be a boy.
Hmm.
And I thought, growing up in the early 70s in India, being a boy, being a man was a privilege. And I thought, if I tried to express my femininity it's probably going to cause me more issues because it's such a shame for a boy to express like a girl. And only hijras and the transgender community in India, they do that. But otherwise, I've never seen trans people anywhere else because they were not even portrayed in the media at the time.
Yeah.
Even when they were portrayed, the first time I remember watching Amitabh Bachchan doing Mere Angane Mein song, there was one scene where he dresses like a hijra and he sings. At that time, I was so I was so offended at the time. Though I was a child, I was watching that and everyone was laughing. They thought it was so funny. To me, it was so powerful that it hit me. Oh my God, he's literally making fun of people like me. Maybe I cannot do this. I cannot dress like this, and if I have to do it, then I'll probably be ridiculed in the community.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
just suppressed my femininity and I learned to survive. And while I was growing up, I remember there was a time in my fourth, I probably in my fourth standard, probably not, I would say 9 or 10 years old, my uncle molested me, and I lived in a time where I didn't expect that to happen, but I just blamed myself. I said, probably it's because I look very feminine, and maybe he did that to me. And I just didn't want to talk about it to my parents, my mom especially, because it was my mom's brother. I
Yeah.
didn't want to talk about it because it was so hurtful, and I really liked him. He was a nice uncle. And then when he did that to me, it was so demeaning, and I lost my. I would say I didn't know what to expect, and I just thought to myself that because I'm a different person, and he did that. Just 2 years after that, my cousin brother did that to me. He was elder than me by 6 years or so, and he molested me again. I mean, he molested me, and I was molested again. And I was thinking to myself, what's going on with my life? And I'm actually hurt so much deep inside, and I can't even tell my parents about it because I was so much shameful about what when it happened. And then they were just going about with the job like pretending nothing happened. They were just pretending like they were the same people, and I could not.
Yeah.
I just
And you
sucked
were
it up.
young. You were so young.
Yeah,
You were
I was a
a child.
child, when these things happen, and that's why I talk about it. So I went through a lot of trauma, first with my femininity, and then with this abuse, and then on top of it, another layer of religion, where
Mhm.
I grew up in a Christian home, and for us, my dad was a Hindu, and he became a Christian when he was in his youth. So in our family, only my parents were Christians, the rest of the family were all Hindus. So we were dealing with that also, that part of our intersectionality. And it was really hard to be in a family where you have 100 people in a family, all Hindus, and then suddenly my dad is only a Christian. So they can't tell anything to my dad. They were always telling me and my brother, they were making fun of us. And so I was so hurtful. And I thought that just because I'm a Christian, I'm going to hell, because the Bible says that people, when a boy dresses like
Yeah.
a girl, he's going to hell.
Right.
And
Right.
so there were a lot of layers of issues and trauma that I was going through, which I did not realize at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then on top of it, in ninth grade, what I did was I really wanted to go out. So this is a time I said, I'm going out. I don't care. I want to be a girl and I want to go out. I don't care what the society thinks about me. So I just wore a long skirt and a top. I
Yes.
tied a scarf around my head like a hijab and I walked out. I was caught
Yep.
by some security folks in that in down our street. They caught hold of me and they asked me, "Where do you live and what are you doing here?" And I didn't know what to tell them, but I just stood and I was I was scared. I remember at the time I thought they would let me go, but they started yelling at me, and probably 8 to 9 people stood around me, and then there were another 15 to 20 people, all just standing and watching this man and a bunch of men standing around me
Mm-hmm.
and yelling, saying that, you are such a disgrace. They use the most derogatory language in Tamil. And I was standing there thinking, won't you just let me go? I'm just a child, I'm just a little boy. I'm not doing anything. Why are you yelling at me?
Yep.
And I was scared at the point because they were drunk and I didn't know if they would do something to me. They didn't
Yep.
touch me, fortunately.
Yeah.
But they were breathing down my neck and they were really close to me. They were pretending they want to hit me. And they said, "Where's your father? Tell me, where's your father?" And I was so scared, and I was standing there. And now I remember that is basically public humiliation. That is the first process of beating up a trans person. And then they could do anything. They can pour kerosene on you, burn you. They would tie
Yes.
you up. They do all kinds of
Yes.
things to you. And since I was in living in a much more, I would say, in a better place or a colony where we had a much more security there, they couldn't do anything to me. But they were trying to threaten me that you cannot come out like this, you cannot live like this, and we don't want to see people like you in our community here.
Yeah.
And that's the way they were they were threatening me. So I spoke in another accent, Hindi accent, North Indian accent, and I somehow ran away from that place. I caught hold of my skirt and I was running like
Yeah. Yeah.
running,
Of course,
fast,
for your
and I
life.
came back
Yeah.
home. Yeah, and I came back home, and that's the first time I felt like I cannot live, because it's so hard for me to live in a community where I could not express myself. And this was in my ninth grade.
Yeah.
That's
You
the
were so
time
young.
I felt like I was so afraid to live, and I was also afraid to die. And I was trying to commit suicide at that time. And I didn't know how to die, and I wanted to die painlessly. I was trying to think of ways that I would, die painlessly. And the only thing that I knew was I had to choke myself. So I took a plastic bag and I put it on my neck and I tied it around my neck. And I also tied my hands behind my back because I didn't want to take it out. And I was choking for probably 2 minutes. And at the time, I was gasping out of air, and I was so scared that I could sense that I would die if there was a few more seconds I can die. Somehow I struggled and I pulled out my hand and I started taking the plastic bag out, and I was crying so hard. I ran to the beach. I sat in the beach and I was crying and I was asking God, saying that, "God, why did you make me like this? I don't want to be a girl. Please change me.
Yeah.
It's so hard for me. Why are other boys are normal? Why can't I be like them?" you know and I was trying to pretend to not to be a girl, because if you express the fact that you are a feminine boy in India, you can get bullied at school, you can be beaten in the community, you can be treated like you are a nobody. And I did not want that, and I did not want more. On top of it, I didn't want my parents to take that shame.
Yeah.
I was okay with my life,
Yeah.
but I didn't want them to take a shame, because they lived in a very dignified community. So that was my childhood. And I remember in my ninth grade, my parents bought a guitar, and I started. I didn't even want to go to the guitar class, so I just took the guitar and I started fiddling with it. I started playing some songs. I was playing Kenny Rogers at the
Oh, that's
time.
fantastic. No, you
You
got to
know?
learn, right? And what's out there at that time.
Yeah, and I
Kenny
was playing
Rogers.
ABBA, Kenny Rogers, Boardroom,
I love it.
and
Abba.
all those songs. I was just fiddling around, and there was a harmonium in our house too.
Hmm.
It's like a harmonica, but you just play it in the Indian style. And I was playing that and I was learning. And I just self-taught myself. And I felt my parents were always telling, "You're actually good, you can sing really well." And I could carry a tune. So what I did was I wrote my first song in my 12th grade. I started writing a song, and I just poured out my heart and I just wrote whatever came in my head. And it was, but I made sure that it rhymed well. And as soon as I got to college, one of the ways that I could get over my anxiety, my gender dysphoria, my sadness, and the thought of suicide, one of the things that kept me away from it was music.
Hmm.
As soon as I got to college, I started my music band in college, and I was good in singing. I was playing my guitar, and I was on stage. I did Stevie Wonder songs.
Fantastic.
Yeah, the part-time lover was the most high, it's really high. And I could belt it. I could really hit it.
Right.
And I got lots of awards because my vocal was great. And at the time I was very smooth and I could sing really well. And I was happy with my life, the way I was expressing on stage. And that kind of took off all these sorrows and the sadness that I was going through. There were times in my life where I had also sung in front of the Prime Minister at the time, Rajiv
Mhm.
Gandhi. I have also sung in front of him. This was in Delhi. So our music group was selected to go and sing. So music wise, I was doing really well. Media wise, I was doing really well. And I was so much into it because to me, that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to act like a girl. I wanted to sing. I wanted to always be myself. And the only way I could express my trauma was in form of songs, in form of music. And I looked at the media at the time, and every time they portrayed a gay person or a trans person,
Mm-hmm.
it was always very demeaning to me.
Yeah.
He showed like a man with a mustache wearing a dress and running around, and everyone was laughing. And I was just turning around and looking at all my parents and my friends and my neighbors when they were watching TV. They were so happy laughing at a man dressed like a woman, and I was just laughing along with them. But because I didn't want them to suspect anything. But deep inside, I was thinking, I don't think I can really come out because they're going to laugh at me if I do that. And that's how my life was. My entire life was all about trauma and music. And I would say I was battling with my religion, I was battling with my own guilt and shame. And I just said to myself, I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to postpone it. I'm not going to be a woman. I'm going to try as much as possible not to not to dress like a girl or be like a girl. I don't want it to happen.
And
And
I
yeah.
thank you. I know I thank you for that. And I appreciate you sharing. And I wanted to give you time to talk to us because it's important. And I think, as an advocate with the work that you're doing, for you to be as brave as you are to come out, I thank you for sharing your story. And I know it's not the happiest of stories. But I do think, for our listeners, people need to know. And you're hitting on so much. First, you grew up in India, and the trauma and the shame that was put on you. You knew who you were at 4, and maybe even before that, but you were able to express at 4. It's who you are. And now we fast forward 18, 20 years, and you have to express yourself through music, but you're not able to just be who you are, for fear of the family, of the society.
Mhm.
And we're talking about India, and so it's unfortunate because it's the same in the United Kingdom, it's in Canada and the United States. And it's just, I'm in a space where it's like we need people like you who are willing to put their voices out there, to be able to tell us what they go through and how universal this is. But I think on the flip side of the trauma and the hurt, there's also should be much more of love and caring for each other and acceptance. And if we can move through that, then your music becomes something also as more of a healing, but also as a power of truth and source that takes on to the next level. Which, and you already have your music, and it is very beautiful and it's very powerful. Now imagine if it was clouded with acceptance and love, where we could go in this world.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, you as like you said, when I have a question, when you were growing up, were there others like you that you found out about or were around, or were you the only one that you knew of that really liked to be more feminine?
I think when I was growing up, I probably thought I was the only person in my entire school of thousands of children who were like me. I mean, not like me. And I thought I was the only person born with an abnormality. And that's why I couldn't see anyone like me, anyone. And even if I would see a boy who was thin and probably feminine looking,
Yeah.
I thought it's just the way he is. But I didn't relate that to being transgender.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, the biggest confusion had was I was attracted to girls and I wanted to be a girl too.
Yeah.
So I couldn't relate to being a gay boy because I was not interested in boys. And that was a part of my confusion as well. But the only time I actually saw people like me was in the train. I was going to Hyderabad once, and I remember there were two hijras who got into our train compartment, and everybody in the train wanted them to get out. They literally pulled out their footwear and they wanted to beat them with it. And I was standing there and looking at them thinking, oh my God, if I come out, this is what is going to happen to me. And they look
That's
very, very nice. They look so. beautiful in the sari, and they were
Yeah.
so bold. And I was thinking to myself, I am exactly like you, but I don't want to be
Yeah.
you, because
Yeah.
if I
The threat
am
of
you,
violence, the
I
threat
know
of violence.
I
Yeah.
would get beaten. And I have gone through so much in my life, but I don't want to be you. And that's how I grew up.
Yeah.
So
Well,
media, the only place I saw trans people
yeah.
not portrayed well. And even in live situations, I saw only the transgender community that was portrayed in such an insignificant way. You were the bottom of the food chain.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is the kind of community I grew up in India. So there was no chance for a person like me to survive, either in school or in college or in a workplace.
Yeah. And the sad thing is that I can't say that we have made great strides in true representation of trans folks in our media. And this is where we make change, right? In these type
Mhm.
of conversations. I want to talk a little bit more about now, you talked about when you were in college, you were able to embrace music, and it was a form of healing for you. How did, when you were able to take all this on, was it truly a release? Was it more helpful, or was it temporary in terms of the relief your expression and music gave you as you were in college?
When I was listening to, no, that's a great point. When I was listening to songs from Boy George, and everyone said this guy's gay, and I was thinking to myself that I can relate to you probably 50% because you're gay, and I think I really love you. I like your songs,
Me too.
Karma Chameleon,
Oh
all
my
the
gosh.
songs.
I grew
Yeah,
up to
and
that song. Yep.
a lot of musicians, even I would say when I was listening to David Bowie,
Hmm.
when I was listening to Prince at the time, Purple Rain, and a lot of the albums, they were very queer, in their music. They were not expressing. I didn't see a man being a woman. That's not
Yeah.
what I saw. I was seeing a person kind of embellishing who they are and being extravagant, like Prince and Boy George. Boy George looked like a girl when they put on the makeup and all that, but I could not really relate to Boy George too, because to me it was, I wanted to be a girl, and Boy George
Yeah.
wanted to express the way they wanted to.
Hmm.
So I didn't see that as a big thing, but at the same time, music was always, I would say, it was the soul, something that hit my soul. When it's soul searching, when it gives you joy,
Yeah.
not happiness. There is a difference between joy and happiness, because joy is something that is like deep within you. Happiness could be like, yeah, I'm very happy today, and I'm gonna have a coffee. It makes me very happy, and everyone is happy, and it was
Sure.
a very
Sure.
different expression. I would say more of a peace that I had. I could relate to it, and I found that peace. Especially, I remember going to the beach and sitting there. I used to take a book and write some song. I would write about God, and I always wrote songs about guilt and shame, how
Mm.
God was still loving to me, because I knew man in the sense mankind would never be compassionate to me,
Human
human
beings,
beings.
unfortunately. Yeah.
So the only way I would probably be, because if God had made me this way, then I wanted to write to God saying that, in form of a song, saying that, God, you made me this way. Why can't you be loving to me? You made me this way, and then you're judging me. Why is it? What are you
Mm.
trying to do? Why
Sure.
did you make
Yeah.
people like me? That's how I wrote my songs, and most of my songs were all guilt filled. And even in that, I was looking for hope. So, to answer to your question, I was looking for hope in my songs. And I wrote more than 30, 40 songs, all about Christianity, all about God, in a very unique way. And if people read the lyrics of the song, it was very deep because it had a lot of hurt in it. And a lot of times, I was the only person who knew what I was going through.
Yes.
And I remember I used to listen to Europe at the time, and music was like, and that's the time the rock music came in. And so they were, and I
Yep.
love Van Halen's Stairway to Heaven. I learned the whole sequence and I played all that. And I used to love the vocals of the range that Deep Purple had, and
Hmm.
Van Halen's guitaring and everything. I was like, this is what I want to do. And to
Yes.
me, music was like an absolute, I would say, the closest release of my expression. It could be feminine or whatever, but to me, it was like this was a queer expression at the time. I was getting into that queer part of my life where I could just express that vocals were so feminine. Most of the voices were very feminine, high range, and I really wanted to sing like that. And I could actually, at the time, I could really hit those notes. And so to me, it was so personal at the time, and I didn't have too much of media. We watched probably some videos here and there, and they played. I remember Live Aid
Right.
when
Freddie
Queen,
Mercury and
right,
Queen. Oh my
when
goodness.
Freddie
Yeah.
Mercury was performing. I remember seeing that live. It was relayed on the TV and a lot of places. And to me, music was like the closest to my expression, closest to my queerness. So I would say that.
Well, I love what you're saying, and I will, the word androgynous, I
Mhm.
really manifested in my lifetime, and so I
Mhm.
want to be sensitive to androgynous prior to the '80s. But I agree in the music, like you're saying, Bowie, Prince, Boy George, Freddie Mercury, and that flamboyance. But it
Mhm.
was music; it was part of their brand and also who they were. You look at Madonna at the same
Mhm.
time, and she wore a suit, and that was, oh, she's gender bending. And so in these time and places, it's okay. But for it to be just who you are and to live in this world, it's still not where it needs to be of true acceptance of people. But it's interesting how it's displayed in music. It is very celebrated, or it was celebrated. But then if you go to a movie, like you were saying, with the Bollywood movies, or even in Hollywood today, the representation is not there. And I have another friend who is trans, and we were discussing this earlier this summer, where it is the stereotypes that are perpetuated in media about trans folks, is that they hate each other, they hate themselves, and that's all we really see, and that's all we get. So when we are bombarded with these images, we just think that this is what a group is, or we think, or we have an idea, subconscious or conscious, and we have to kind of unravel it. And I think about children, but then you have the celebrations, and we still do of these celebrations in the music. So that's a lot to dig. We're not going to solve for it, but
Mhm.
it's an observation I have. And I also think about Robbie Williams and from Take That. And I remember I was a teenager, and he was in one of the videos, and he walked in shaved head with a skirt on, and I was celebrating, and I loved it. But you don't see that as much. And so it's very interesting, everything that you're saying in this continuation. And I, for one, am very glad that you're here, Celia, and I appreciate you. I want to fast forward a little bit now, and I want to think about where you are now, and fill our listeners in on what happened after college. But I think where I want to go with our conversation, because it's so pivotal, and it's so so many gems are here. What would you want for things to be different, for somebody like you, for folks with children like you, for children that are growing up, maybe some teenagers or tweens, as we call them in North America, they're growing up right now. What would you want to see different so that they are feel like they're accepted within their homes, and also getting bombarded with images of love and acceptance for who they are versus your experience?
Thank you, Ash. I think it's important to educate the parents. There's always a stereotypical world that we live in, where people are boxed in these small categories. Now, I saw, growing up in India, the music was a little more wide because we could listen to music from America, from Australia,
Yeah.
like Air Supply, and then we could listen to music from Europe, from China as well, and other countries. So I would say a lot of MTV was there at the time. We saw MTV, I watched MTV, and I felt like music kind of pushed the boundaries, which the movie industry did not.
Hmm.
The movie
I would
industry
agree
was
with that. I would agree with that.
Right.
Yeah.
The movie industry was just catching up on a few things, and there were just a few scenes where they would introduce a trans character, but it was always portrayed in a very derogatory way. Drag queens, someone just trying to be a girl and running around in the dorm, and a gay person always
Yes.
portrayed as a very flamboyant and always, they had a very typical way of talking. They're not that way. That's how the media wanted to portray the LGBTQ community. And to me, that was really important. So I think I didn't want to be boxed into these. And And that's why, to me, when I came out, the first thing, if I had told someone that I want to be, I want to be different, and I didn't know where I was getting into those boxes. Because when I came out as trans, I remember in this country, I came to this country in 97, and I didn't know where to fit myself in, because when I came out, it was either you're a cross dresser or you're a transsexual.
Yes.
And we were living in a different world where the movie media industry was talking about transsexuals, and they were always called transsexuals. There was nothing like transgender. And then they would just say, this is a man in a dress who are cross dressers. And there's a movie called Just Like a Woman. It's a beautiful movie about a cross dresser who is coming out, but he's thrown out of his relationship with his girlfriend because she thinks that he is cheating on him. But
Oh, wow.
it's a comedy movie actually. But I saw that movie, which was very fun. But to me, it was serious because I could not relate to either of these boundaries. I didn't want to have a sex at the time. At the time, they called it as a sex SRS, which
Hmm.
is sex replacement surgery.
Yes.
No, it is
Uh-huh.
not. And now it's, the science has improved so much where people now they call it gender reassignment surgery because you're dealing with a gender identity, not with a sexual orientation issue.
Yes.
So the lack of education is what is a biggest, I would say, the biggest problem in our country. And when the media industry cannot portray trans people in the right way, in any media, I would say, not even in the movies. Let's take even in the media, people who get killed. Oh, there was a drag queen who got killed. There was a man dressed like a woman who got killed. This is
Yes.
how they call you. And I remember, even after so many years, when I went back to India and I was telling my story in Times of India, and I told them that do not call me I am a trans person and you want to use the right terminologies. I
Yes.
educated them. And even after I did that, when my story came out, they said Daniels is married, Daniels' wife and a child, but Daniels is a transsexual. And Daniels has now Celia. And then they started she from there. And it was
Oh, no.
very derogatory. And I told my friend, why is this happening? After I educated the media so much, this is just 2 years back, I'm talking about, not even like, way back,
Yeah.
2 years back in Coimbatore. And I told I was asking my friend, and my friend Kalki Subramaniam, she's a big trans activist in India. She said, Celia, the biggest problem in India we have is media sensitization. People don't understand. They just want to write whatever is appealing to the audience. So even if you tell them the whole story that you're a non-op transgender, they will never consider you that way. The word transgender is something that people don't want to use. Transsexual is what they used to. So to me, that was a big no because I'm not a transsexual. Um, and when you're and I had to educate myself too. I think parents need to know when the children come out and they have different expressions, they need to understand why my child is behaving differently. What what avenues do I have? What kind of support system do I have? And where do I go? Where do I start? If my child comes out and says, Mom, I want to wear a skirt. Or it's much more easier for girls to wear a jeans and then say, I want to be a
It's
boy. And they,
totally fine.
yeah, you're a tomboy, you're cool.
Right.
And the
Right.
parents think, oh, it's
Exactly.
nice. But it's totally when you're living in a patriarchal community, especially in India, it's a big no. A man cannot come out as a woman. It's a big no. A woman can express however she wants to. And that's what bothered me because I was looking at all these pretty dresses. When I go to India, I see all this amazing clothing and colors and
And the
jewelry. And I'll be,
saris and the lenga suits and the
I
Punjabi.
know,
Yeah.
I'm like, my God, I want to wear every damn thing. I want everything.
Yes,
Why am I not able to
exactly.
do it?
Well,
And I did
and
it.
as you should. And I have struggled with exactly what you've said. When I was introduced to this concept, and it was a huge aha moment for me, I don't know, like 25 years ago or something, a very long time ago, was like, yeah, when a woman or woman identifying person wears jeans or flannel, oh, it's okay. Or, yeah, exactly what you said, a tomboy, or it's a phase, or they just like to dress it, but it's acceptable. But a man wears a skirt, a man identifying person wears a skirt, and everybody just kind of loses themselves for no reason. But
Mhm.
it should, and I will agree, I like women's fashion. I would rather wear women's clothing than men's clothing typically in North America, because I really don't want to choose between black, blue, and white. I like many colors on
Mhm.
it where I am. I think to ground us just a little bit, I would love for you to educate our listeners on the difference between transgender, transsexual, and cross dressers. I would definitely want this to be educational, and you're an educator. I think that as we talk about the support that people have, giving them these words and helping them understand it may help them as they learn about what it means to be part of this community and ways that we can support this community.
Yeah, absolutely. I would, I want to just give you a quick introduction. So I got married in India. I
Yeah.
married this beautiful girl, and I thought to myself that if I get married to a girl and she's beautiful and she's going to wear all these beautiful clothes, it's going to take away my femininity. I don't know what kind of myth it was.
The things we say to ourselves, right?
Yeah, because nobody tells you anything. You can't talk to even my friends, my close friends. I couldn't tell in India. And I was not, I was working in one of the most prestigious institutes in India. It is called Indian Institute of Science. And
Hmm.
I was working on crystallography and human genome project. I mean, education wise, I was really, I did well. I studied well. I got my master's in computer science, and I was working in this research institute, which is great. And even there, I saw people were so ignorant when it comes to trans community. It's probably a topic that people, it's like the elephant in the room every time when you're in a discussion, wherever it is, but they don't give importance to it because it's like, I don't care, because they don't see a lot of them coming out. People don't come out in India. It's not that common because if you come out, you're going to lose everything. You're
Yeah.
going to lose your privilege as a man. And
Right. Who
that is,
wants that? Oh my goodness.
yeah, oh my God, I want respect. So to me,
Yeah.
I was so scared because I was worried about a lot of things and what if people just say that this man is actually trying to be a girl and why are you getting him married? All this kind of concepts.
Sure.
I was so
Sure.
confused. So I got married to this beautiful lady, and I was really attracted to her, and I'm still attracted to her. Let me put it that way. And I'm
Yeah.
not attracted to men. So we got married, and I came to this country because this country needed me. It's not because I was looking for a job. I was working in JP Morgan Chase, and I always correct that because I didn't come here seeking for a job. I was doing really well in India. And my wife was working in Nielsen Media. I was working in Dun& and Bradstreet. So we had a great job. This country needed me, and I came here to New York. They needed my expertise. So I came here and I was working in one of the firms in Wall Street, in JP Morgan Chase at the time. So I remember even there, I was struggling a lot and I didn't know. And long story short, we came to this country, we started our life. I had a child, and then I was going through the same problem that I had while I was a child. And I was thinking to
Right.
myself, oh my God, I thought this is going to go away. I'm married now. I have a child. And why am I still doing this? I'm
Right.
a successful businessman, but here I am going through the same problem. So, how do I tell my wife? So, 4 years after I got married, that's the first time I'm going to my wife and I'm telling her. And this was in Florida. Can you imagine? I don't know. I told my
No.
wife, sweetheart, I like wearing women's clothes, and I think I like wearing women's clothes. And my wife said, "Oh, there are a lot of men who do it, so don't do it. Don't do it. You're in such a prestigious job. You're an executive
Hmm.
in a company.
Yes.
Don't do that thing, kind of things, because it's going to cause more problems to you." And I believed her, and it was the right advice she gave me, and I thought, okay, I'll try not to do it, but it's not that I want to do it, or it's not an addiction, but this is something that I don't know how to deal with. So I called a gay counselor and I asked him, hey, can you tell me what is going on with me? And he said, you're gay, you're a feminine gay. And I thought maybe I'm like Boy George.
Sure.
Well,
Right.
I want to
You
be a
would never
girl.
identify, but you never
Yeah.
identify with Boy George. So how
Yeah,
does
I was thinking to myself, but I want to be a girl. I want to wear a dress and I want to be like an Indian girl. I want to wear half sari. I want to be a sari kind of girl. But how can I live my life like this? And I'm living in Florida, and that's what I get from people. And I didn't know what to do. So I started educating myself and I started reading articles. And these are not, at the time, you can't just Google and find things out, because you
It
get all
wasn't
kinds of
there.
nonsense in the internet at the time.
Hmm.
But what I did was I started reading research articles. I started reading articles where from Stanford, from Hopkins, from Harvard Medical. A lot of the articles I was reading as to why is a man trying to behave like a woman? Is there any medical condition to it? What is it called? I started reading and reading and reading a lot of articles, because I was doing a search about my life. Why am I different? If I can find out the reason why I am different, I can help people who are like me. So when I started reading, the first thing I found was people like me are called transgender. Then I said, no, I'm not a transgender. Then the terminology really hit me, because there are only two kinds of gender in this world. It's like transgender or cisgender.
Hmm.
So if you're a, and then there's an agender, where people
Yes.
are born with two organs, that both male and female organs. They're called
Hmm.
agender, or sorry, intersex. They're called androgynous
Intersex.
intersex.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a lot of people are in that category too. So there are three types of people in this world. And so I didn't identify with a cisgender, because if you identify in the gender you're born, you're called a cisgender. It's called CIS gender. And I didn't identify in that, because I was born as a man and I wanted to be a woman. But I also did not hate being a man. There was a little part of me that said, okay, I'm not going to hate who I am, but I don't want to operate on myself, because there's so much of complication. It's completely changing your anatomy. It's going to be really hard. And I said, can I live without changing myself? Is it possible? Can I medically transition? I mean, can I socially transition? All these thoughts were hitting me. But unfortunately, at the time, the medical community said, if a man wakes up one day and says, always wanted to be a girl, then the only option they have is they have to change their gender. So they have to go through medical transition. And I was thinking at the time, no, it's not. I don't want to go through that. I like who I am. I'm not going to hate my male gender, but I really love my feminine gender. Can I live as a woman in this world? Can I still be married? Can I still be a father? Not a mother, because I know I want to be a father for my daughter. My daughter
Yes.
misses a father. She has a mother already. So I was battling with my family issues at this time. I was battling with a lot of professional issues, and I was battling with personal issues. I was battling with, I would say, a lot of issues in my faith and my religion too.
Hmm.
And a lot of these things were just weighing me down. And I knew at the time that what I was going through was called gender dysphoria. You're born in a gender, but your preferred gender is a feminine gender. So I was born as a man, and my preferred gender is a feminine gender. So that is called, and then you switch between gender, and that's when your gender dysphoria comes.
Hmm.
So that is a lot of people go through that. So within the transgender spectrum, so first thing was I realized that I was transgender, and within the transgender spectrum there are three. It's called non-op transgender, pre-op transgender, and post-op transgender. Post-op transgender are people who have taken hormones, they medically transition. Pre-op transgender folks are probably getting ready to transition, or they may not even take transition medically. They may just socially, be who are they are. They may probably do a top surgery. They may not do a bottom surgery. So a lot of trans men do that today. They don't go through a lot of process of changing their anatomy.
Hmm.
Um, it's mostly they take off the breasts and all that. And that's how I've seen a lot of trans folks having just breasts, but still having, they have not done the bottom surgery. So I identify as a non-op transgender, where a person like me doesn't want to take hormones or anything, because they just want to blend in into whatever gender that they like to.
Hmm.
And that's why I consider myself as a non-op transgender and a gender fluid person, because there is a 10% of my life I still live as Daniels, and then there is a part of me that, like, 90% of my life I live as Celia. And sometimes I like to explore my gender as a gender neutral person too. That is, I go by they them pronouns. Sometimes I have a wig. I don't want to put on makeup, but I wear something else very feminine, very androgynous looking dressing too. So that is the way in which the the categories are. So it's cisgender, transgender. And then there are folks who are in the gender non-binary. They don't identify as male or female. They identify as they, them. And I like to be as a gender non-binary as well. So
Mhm.
27% of the children today, of the youth in California, identify as gender non-binary. And if you imagine only in California, 27%, across the world, there are a lot of people
A lot of people.
who are probably expressing in whatever gender that they like to. And that's how it should be. And even within the LGBTQ spectrum, you cannot say that you are gay, you are this one, or you're that. People might be different. Even within the trans community, even within the transgender spectrum, there are people who are very different. Because if you take the androgynous folks, right, the ones who are intersex, they have been born with two organs, both male and female organs. And the parents
Yes.
have to decide for the children because the doctor says you've got to pick a gender. And if you watch Katie Couric's National Geography about gender revolution, there's a beautiful article that you will know that there are people. The intersex community is as equivalent as a woman who has a brunette or a red hair.
Hmm.
So there are so many people today in this world who identify as intersex. And I have a friend, very good friend of mine, who's also an intersex. And their story is so hard to hear because they were so confused and they were kicked out of their being a professor from a college to having a doctorate and still getting kicked
Horrible.
out because your gender. So I'll just pause here, and I know you have a lot of questions, but I hope that was clear in terms of those categories of gender that we are going through.
Yeah, no, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I've learned over the years, and it becomes more and more nuanced as we learn, which is fantastic, is that you have what we used to call cross-dressers. It almost feels like a derogatory term, because it's gender, which is the male female that is socially assigned, and then there's the sex, male female, that is biological. And we've been living in this duality and really ignoring, erasing the folks that are definitely in between for far too long. But now, hopefully, people are starting to realize that this duality, it doesn't exist. It can be changed. And I feel like you're such a living example of this. I mean, let's recap you. You knew at 4 years old, you were born a boy, but you knew you liked women's clothing. And then, of course, the horrible things that happened to you as a child, coming through, growing up, trying to figure out who you were, and knowing that you liked your body, you liked being with the sex you were, but you knew that gender wise, you really enjoyed more feminine clothing, the makeup, the earrings. Fast forward, now you're like, well, let me take my place in society as a man and a privileged man, get married. But even decades later, as your daughter grows and as you are living, you're realizing that even marriage hasn't changed that, how you feel when you were 4. And I that's definitely been an experience for me from the folks that I know, is it never stopped, it never ended. And my sincere hope is that folks really do embrace who they are. And now here you are, identifying as a married man, you want to be a father, and you love feminine clothing. And you embrace that. And you have your pronouns of she, her. You go by Celia, like you said, 90%, and 10% of the time it's Daniels, because that's just who you are and that's your expression. I love it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I appreciate your education. I think people need to know more. And one thing that also really struck me in this last piece when we were talking is that, you go to a gay counselor and you don't get the support you need. And I think it's so important right now that we have folks that are trans and are healers, and folks are getting the education that they need to support trans folks. But what's really important, just like in the Indian community, is we need other Indian counselors to help us understand our experience and our Indianness and living as an immigrant or living as a first generation. Same way, our children and folks that are in the 20s, 30s, even 70s today need somebody they can identify with as a mental health professional too, so they can get the support they need to really live the lives that they want to live and be happy. And what's underlying, and I think it is still today for you, is your music and that intersection and where you're able to express yourself. But unfortunately, media still hasn't caught up. Can I capture that all?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. You expressed it in the right way. One thing that I also want to mention is I didn't identify as a cross-dresser, though I was cross-dressing. To me is an inward expression of what you're going through. It's an
Mhm.
outward expression of what you're going through internally. Because women are always cross-dressing. If you're talking about it, right?
Wonderful
Begin.
point. Wonderful
And
point.
but women, men, when you wear something which is not accepted by the society, then it becomes cross-dressing. But for women, it is not. Now that's why the word cross-dressing comes from the word called transvestites.
Hmm.
Transvestites were basically people of other gender wearing different clothing, and that's why it was called cross dressing. A man wearing women's clothing, women wearing man's clothing. And to me, it doesn't make sense when you look at a cross cultural relationship. If I wear a veshti, which is more like a kurta in US, I would be called a cross dresser
And that's a blouse.
because
Kurta is a blouse. A blouse
right,
is a blouse.
exactly. Kurta is more like I would say, kurta is more like a churidar kind of thing. It's a long shirt, which is probably till your knees, and that
Yes.
is very common in the Asian culture. South Asian culture. Pakistanis wear that. Afghanistan folks wear that. People in the Muslim culture, they wear that. Even in southern India, they wear that. Now, and that is very common. When I first wore that in Florida, people were looking at me like, what are you wearing?
Mm.
So because to them it was very different, and they're trying to understand other cultures too. If I go to Scotland, if I see a man wearing a skirt, to me it will be like, hey, you're wearing a skirt. I don't care what you're doing, but you're wearing a skirt and you're cross-dressing. No, it is wrong actually,
Hmm.
because that's why we need to travel and see different cultures. And there are lungis and veshtis. These are very common outfits that Indian men wear in India, and it's such a prestigious outfit. And when they wear that, when people over here, when they look at it, they'll say, you're just wearing something like a skirt. You're wearing a
Yeah.
sarong. No,
Right.
they're not.
And that's not the case at
That's
all.
not the case. So the cross-dressing has a very confused, I would say, a very confused connotation to it. And I don't identify as a cross-dresser, though I started thinking that I was a cross-dresser. And then I came to this point where I'm not a cross-dresser, I'm not a transsexual, but I'm a person who is doesn't identify in the gender that I was born, and that's why I'm a transgender. It
Yeah.
was a very simple terminology, a very simple understanding. American journals had written that beautifully, and a lot of them they are still updating their journals even today, because they said gender non-binary is actually an issue. It is a mental illness. Now they have taken it out.
Yeah.
Gender
It's
dysphoria
not.
is a mental illness. Now they're taking it out of
It's
this.
not. Yep.
Now
No.
they are realizing that CDC is realizing that these are issues where they had not, I would say, not given too much of thought to it. So,
Well, it's a confirmation. We're trying to conform to society, and that's just not the case. Again, we've put ourselves in general into these dualities, and there's no reason for us to live in these dualities.
in US, it's very clear, right? Men always wear brown, blue, or black clothing,
Hmm.
and women are always choosing the colorful choices. And so there's always a color distinction, and there's always something which is related to it, like beer and watching baseball. That's where you're a man. They kind of have these cars and bikes and doing.
Right.
That's how it is. And women are more into lipstick and heels. And no, actually, it is not. I mean,
It's
anyone can
not.
be in any of these
It's
categories.
not exactly, and how they express themselves.
Right.
And I think we definitely are, like you're saying, the more nuance with these words, the dysphoria and gender non-binary, the pronouns, so much better than it was 30 years ago, for sure. Definitely much better than it was 40 years ago, but the acceptance is big. And, for me, and I hope people educate me, is cross-dresser just, is it the derogatory word? I think it is. And I look forward to people educating me. But what's important is what you've been harping on this entire time, is that this duality and how we choose to live in it or not, and how we can move forward. And as we embrace and learn, we can see that we live not in these dualities. And I think it's so important with what you're doing. And my sincere hope is that through music, through the arts, we can see more of folks just like you, like you said, the transsexuals, people that are gender non-binary, being able to see just the plethora of expression in all societies. That is my sincere hope. And Celia, thank you. One thing that I want to ask as we kind of end our conversation today is if you had one call to action, and I know this might be hard to choose, for us to be more inclusive in our lives, what would you want us to do?
The I usually say this is being an ally for the community is ALLIES, allies, right? So A is first is acknowledging your privilege that you are who you are, especially for people like yourself. You know, you need to acknowledge your privilege as to you're not trans, but you have the ability to help people like us. So that is acknowledging your privilege as to who you are. Then you have to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And the third L is well, the second L is learn to unlearn a lot of things, because there's a lot of unlearning that needs to be done. And also I is basically for instigate tough conversations in the industry that you are in the media industry. Instigate those conversations, because it's not about just giving an award to a movie that is just trans representation, but there are a lot of people who are hiding today. So
Yes.
instigating the tough conversation is important. E is education. You know, you need to educate even in the media industry. I have read a lot of scripts from different movie industries. Two executive producers had asked me to look at some of the scripts and give my input to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done that. And the last one is S. So S means you have to support the trans community by getting involved with what they're doing. And you know, if you want to make a movie for where you have a trans character, then you need to educate the crew also when you're working with them.
Yes. Yes.
Especially when you're a script writer, the crew. I remember the Transparent with Jeffrey Tambor, what Jill Solway had done. She had educated the entire. They had educated the entire crew, and the folks that they got involved, where a lot of opportunities were given to the trans community. And I did not get a chance to act, but a lot of my friends were in the show, and I was really happy that they did a great job, except for the scandal that came up and it completely destroyed the whole show. But
So
it was made really well, and I think that if we want to change, the media has the power to do it. The
I
movie,
agree.
I think when you are looking at all the movies, especially when you have the Wonder Woman, and recently there was a lot of trans people who are given roles in those movies. I remember one of my friend who is a producer, he made a movie about a gender fluid person. And I told him, what if you get a chance to have a very famous actor act the role of a trans person today in your movie, if they're willing to do it? Um, what would you do? And then he said, Celia, I've known you for many years. And one thing that I learned is when you are making a movie about a trans person, you may probably not even have a famous actor doing it. But if you have a trans person doing that role, there can nothing be more authentic than that.
Exactly. I love that. That's exactly right. Use the people, just like if you're going to be doing something about Indian folks, well,
Mhm.
ask Indian folks. And
Exactly.
and with trans folks, if you're going to have a trans character, like do you have a transparent person in the writer's room? Do you
Mhm.
have them writing a spec script? Do you have, like you said, do you have a trans person who is getting paid and wants to be there to educate the crew?
Mhm.
Right? That's how we learn, having these conversations like you are teaching me. This is where we need to, get rid of any of those hesitations, defensiveness, and just embrace that. And exactly who else to tell the story, and in this case, another trans person. And I think what's important to note is that one person isn't going to speak for an entire community, but you need to educate yourself and speak to many people to learn about the variety of thoughts and conversations within a community, and then do the best to represent. And you will find out if you fail or not. But what needs to happen is that you can say, I did my best. I spoke with a group of people, and this is the process. To me, I will forgive more if I know the process versus if somebody was like, no, we just had so and so right. And it's like, well, were they part of the community? No. Well, then I can't take you seriously, and
Mhm.
you have done harm with your content.
Mhm.
How can people get a hold of you and find out more about you, Celia?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am on LinkedIn. You can search for Celia Sandhya Daniels or Celia San Daniels at gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram at Celia Sandhya Daniels. I think I'm probably the only person with the Celia and Sandhya in the middle. There are a lot of Celia Daniels in the world. The reason why I wanted to emphasize Sandhya is because that is one of my intersectionality, right? I'm an Indian person.
Yeah.
And so that is so important. I want to be known as an immigrant, a brown person, a parent, a dad, a husband, a musician. I have also done some documentaries. I've done so. I want to be known through all these wonderful intersectionalities in life, and not just as a trans person. Even
Exactly.
when we make a movie about a trans person, or when we make a movie about a person growing old, we want to put the right characters in. We give so much of importance to the movie. And not all movies will be a blockbuster. Not all movies will get an Oscar. But when you can really make a difference in the community, when you make thousands of movies, there's always one movie that probably is very thought provoking. And it's not a documentary, but it's actually a beautiful portrayal of a person's life. One last thing that I wanted to talk about was about the recent, which Harry Potter,
J.K.
J.K.
Rowling.
Rowling. I was a big fan of J.K. Rowling because of the content and the script that she wrote. And when she started becoming very transphobic, what happened is the arrogance started coming in.
Hmm.
When the arrogance starts coming into media that, hey, no matter what I write, no matter what I do, and now that I have a say, I can do whatever I want. Now that is arrogance. When
Hmm.
arrogance comes into the media industry, especially when you're representing characters, and these are people's lives, it's not a lifestyle choice. I didn't choose this because it's a lifestyle choice. This is my life. And
Exactly.
I now my daughter's 20 years old. When she was 15 years old, I came out to her. And I'm still married to a beautiful woman that I married 23 years back. We live together. The only way that I could help them is to keep on educating them constantly.
Hmm.
And I have also been in sessions where we educated Warner Brothers, Sony Pictures, a lot of the crew and cast in that, I would say, different sitcoms we have also educated. And we continue to do as a part of TransCan work. I
Hmm.
am an executive director and I'm in the executive board for TransCan work. And this is what we do. We educate a lot of the companies, the organizations, because we need to create a change right from the bathroom to the boardroom. Even
Yes.
in the boardroom, especially when you're in Warner Brothers or any other, music, film industry, a lot of your board, if it's pure white folks and old white people, like Fox News, you saw the recent scandal that happened. Now you are not having diversity. When women are struggling to get to board,
Hmm.
trans people cannot. And that's why,
Right.
to me, I am also an ally to the women community.
Hmm.
I speak and help the women also to represent us. And that's another way I have done. Like my wife, she represented trans community in her office when
Hmm.
they had a conversation. Very simple conversations, very practical and very powerful conversations. I think we can change the world. These conversations are so important because we are not doing a groundbreaking talk here, but these are thought provoking. And these conversations are so important for directors, producers, scriptwriters, even cast and crew, cameramen too, the food folks,
Caterers, the food.
catering
Yes.
services, to the
Backstage.
backstage folks who are working.
Yes.
Everybody, when they know that there are trans people and they start working with you, we are just another human being like you. And we also have families. We have to feed our families. So we are just people who are looking for identity in the community as a human being. We don't want something very special. So is it so hard for the media industry to even provide that? I think you can do better, right? That's why I think these conversations are so powerful, Ash. Thank you for,
Thank you.
giving me.
I won't put you on the spot to answer, but I feel like a part two and part three is coming up because I feel like we just got to the surface and we're like an hour in and we could go on for another couple of hours. But I love where you're ending this is humanity. And as a screenwriter, That's what we try to show in every single scene. And as we build our characters, can we have empathy? And this is where it's so important that the voice of the people that you're trying to show this humanity about need to be part of the conversation or be the writer. And that everybody from that script to that production to the red carpets to the reveals on Netflix or your streamers, everybody in that process needs the same education and be investing in that. Because what is really bothersome for me is in Disclosure. It's on Netflix. It's a wonderful documentary, and it speaks to exactly what you've been saying. Where are the opportunities? Unfortunately, when you have in media, it's self-loathing characters instead of just, I'm just trans and that's one part of me, versus it's only me, I'm only trans and I hate myself. And if you continue to see that, what's being perpetuated? And, and that could be one part of the trans story, but we need to see vibrant trans people who are living all like you who are there. Are we seeing these characters? Are we seeing the comedic person who happens to be trans as well? And if we could see that plethora of that humanity, then the self-loathing becomes one instead of it being a character that we currently see. And I definitely want to put an end to that. Celia, you are amazing. I hope we continue to, well, we'll continue having conversations no matter what, but I hope you'll come back as a guest. Any final words to our listeners?
Thank you so much, Ash. I think a lot of things are changing towards 2021. So there's so many LGBTQ folks who have been elected, and I've seen a lot of holiday stories which are LGBTQ related. In fact, my
Yes.
daughter
Yes.
played one of the movies by Kristen Stewart, and not, I'm sorry,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah. And
that
Dan
movie was
Levy's
very
in
good.
there.
I forgot her last name. I'm sorry. The,
You got it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it was great. And my so it took some time even for my wife to really understand. But I think when you're willing to see the change, I see a lot of future and a hope for people, and a great way to start 2021 is to look towards the hope that we have, especially during pandemic. It's been a lot of things going on, but thank you so much for this opportunity. I'll be more than happy to help music producers, and also the executive producers who've been working with me in certain areas where they've asked for my, and I'd be happy to help in any way possible, because what you're doing is so important. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Celia. I'm looking forward to more conversations.